A lot of people think that architecture is a well-paid profession, and whilst it's possible to make a lot of money in architecture, most architects are underpaid. It takes on average between 8 to 10 years to become a fully qualified architect, which is comparable to how long it takes to become a doctor or a lawyer. Now, all of these professions take an enormous amount of time and effort to complete, but the pay scale is different. GPs have a minimum salary of £62,000 a year, whilst a corporate lawyer is expected to earn £63,000 a year. Whilst architects, well, architect with 5 years of experience earns between £35,000 and £40,000 a year. So why are architects underpaid? I think there's 4 key issues that contribute to this. The first one is the economic reality of the supply and demand. And the key issue is in that there's just too many students in the School of Architecture. The problem lies in the fact that universities are incentivized to produce a lot of students because they're getting paid for it. And so with a lot of students being produced every year, there's a higher demand for architectural jobs, which creates a situation where even if you're really good, you can be struggling to find a job. There's just too many graduates on the market. And because there's too many graduates on the market, they become dispensable. And this also creates a situation where some are willing to work for less than is reasonable. And this drives the salaries down. The second problem I found is the technical skills. Now, architects often pride themselves for being jack of all trades and that they can do everything. But I don't think that's true, because architects fundamentally lack technical skills. Things like understanding of building regulations, code, the contracts, planning system, software skills, detailing. All those things are severely lacking in architects' abilities. And this might be because most architecture graduates, for example, never held a brick in their hand, or some have never worked in a workshop working with wood or metal, and they don't have an understanding of how to put things together, an ability to build things. But the other part of this problem is the fact that 97% of stuff that gets taught in School of Architecture is completely irrelevant in the real world. Like 97% of stuff that's getting taught in the school is design stuff. Whilst that's really nice and makes for exhilarating learning experience, in reality, design comprises only about 10% of work at the best. So the other boring stuff that you're doing every day is not getting taught. The other problem with architects not being paid well is the branding issue. And this is to do with the public perception, because most people don't actually see the value in architects. They don't know what's the reason for architects to exist. Like, for example, it's pretty easy to sell an idea of seeing a doctor if you're ill, or having to hire a lawyer if there's some sort of dispute that you need to solve. But if you need to build a building, who do you turn to? That's right, the builder. That's what most people think. They don't think of turning to an architect, because architects, although most people have heard of what architects do or who architects are, most don't think that architects are available to them. Like, ironically, this means that architecture is perceived as an elite profession that's not available to regular people. And this is kind of sad, because most people are surrounded by architecture. We are living in architecture. However, the public perception is that architect services are not available to them. And finally, there is this shocking lack of business hygiene in architectural businesses. And I borrowed this term from Ron Willard, who is the host of the podcast Business of Architecture UK, where he kind of talks about different ways architectural businesses can be healthy. And one of the simplest way to make sure that your business is healthy is by making sure that, you know, you're bringing more money in that you're spending. The simple equation of revenue minus cost equals profit oftentimes doesn't work in architectural practice. It's more like revenue minus cost equals negative balance. So how do we make up for this negative balance? Well, we make up for it with work. We work late and we work overtime. And this is set by very low fees that are oftentimes unrealistic to produce the work that's required for the job. And the main problem with that is that there's a culture of undercharging and undercutting fees, which partly comes from the fact that architects are very keen to win new projects, to compete for new opportunities. And the easiest way to do that is by reducing your fees significantly compared to your competition. In the short term, this creates an opportunity to work on an exciting project. And although it results in a financial loss, architects see this as a marketing opportunity to advertise them to new clients after this project is completed. So it's seen as an investment, but in reality, all it creates a benchmark in the customer's mind that says, is that architects' fees are very low. And the more architects are doing this, the lower the fees in the industry are gonna get. And I think there's certainly a solution to this problem, and it is an opposite of what's being taught in the School of Architecture, which is, you know, go broad and become a multidisciplinary architect. Whilst it's certainly cool to do this sort of thing in the School of Architecture and impress your peers with how multifaceted and multi-talented you are, in the real world, the exact opposite is true. The more you specialize, the better your financial situation will be. And you don't have to look far for an example of this. Like, doctors become surgeons, they become ontologists, lawyers become corporate lawyers, they become defense attorneys, and I think architects can do the same. We can specialize, we can become housing specialists, we can become passive house certified architects, we can be conservation architects. And there's this timeless concept that I discovered in the 22 immutable laws of marketing that talks about the importance of category and how it's important to be first in the prospect's mind. Because in today's crowded world, with so many people competing for attention and so many businesses and people offering different things, it's quite noisy out there. So in order to stand out, we must often kind of narrow down and focus instead of going broad, so that we can use our skills and our time and our energy more effectively to get to that specific goal. And of course, it's important to understand that a lot of architects are in this for creative pursuits, and therefore the reward is more than just financial gain. However, I think if you are in architecture to make a living out of it, it's important to narrow down and focus. And if you want some inspiration on how to get there, click on this video here to learn some lessons from one of the most commercially successful architects of all time, Norman Foster.